In the summer of 1942, the German army launched its Great Summer Offensive on the Eastern Front, Operation Blue. Adolf Hitler's goal was no longer Moscow, but the oil fields of the Caucasus. To protect the southern flank of that drive, the Germans needed to secure the Volga River city of Stalingrad. What began as a strategic objective quickly became an obsession. For Hitler, capturing the city that bore Stalin's name would deliver a crushing psychological blow to the Soviet Union. For Stalin, losing it was unthinkable. Both dictators turned Stalingrad into a symbol that neither side could afford to lose. By late August, the German Sixth Army, under General Friedrich Paulus, had reached the outskirts. On August 23rd, the Luftwaffe unleashed one of the most devastating aerial bombardments of the war. Wave after wave of bombers turned much of Stalingrad into a blazing inferno. Thousands of civilians died in a single day. The city became a sea of rubble, twisted steel, collapsed buildings, and endless fields of broken concrete. The Soviet High Command poured every available man into the defense. The 62nd Army, commanded by General Vasily Chuov, was ordered to hold the west bank of the Volga at all costs. Stalin's famous Order Number 277, not one step back, was enforced with ruthless discipline. Soviet soldiers crossed the Volga at night under constant German artillery and air attack. Many boats never reached the shore. What followed was one of the most savage urban battles in human history. From September through November 1942, the fighting devolved into a brutal house-to-house struggle known as Rattenkrieg, the War of the Rats. German and Soviet soldiers fought for single buildings, single floors, even single rooms. The Red October factory, the Barricadi Ordnance Works, and the giant grain elevator changed hands dozens of times. Snipers lurked in the ruins. Storm groups attacked through sewers and basements. Men killed each other with knives, shovels, and bare hands at point-blank range. By mid-November, the Germans controlled most of the city, but could not deliver the final blow. Their supply lines were stretched thin. The brutal Russian winter was beginning. Then, on November 19th, the Soviets launched a massive counteroffensive called Operation Uranus. Striking far to the north and south of Stalingrad, Soviet forces smashed through weaker Romanian and Italian Allied lines and raced behind the German Sixth Army. By November 23rd, the trap was closed. Over 250,000 German and Axis troops were encircled in a shrinking pocket around Stalingrad. Hitler refused to allow a breakout. He ordered Paulus to hold the city to the last man. An airlift was attempted, but the Luftwaffe could not deliver enough food, fuel, or ammunition. Inside the pocket, German soldiers slowly starved and froze. They ate horses, then rats, then worse. Frostbite and disease killed as many as bullets. By Christmas, the once proud Sixth Army was reduced to a ragged, freezing remnant. In January 1943, the final Soviet offensive began. The pocket was split in two. On January 31st, Field Marshal Paulus, promoted by Hitler the day before, surrendered the southern pocket. The northern pocket held out a few more days before it, too, capitulated on February 2nd. Of the roughly 250,000 Axis soldiers trapped in Stalingrad, fewer than 6,000 would ever see Germany again. The Battle of Stalingrad was the turning point of the Second World War on the Eastern Front. It cost the lives of over 1 million soldiers and civilians. It broke the myth of German invincibility and gave the Soviet Union the momentum that would eventually carry them all the way to Berlin. Without any further wait, let's get into these stories. My name is Karl Heinrich, a 20-year-old private in the 6th Army, 94th Infantry Division. I came from a small town near Munich, where I had worked in my father's bakery before the war. In the summer of 1942, we were told this would be the decisive blow on the Eastern Front. Operation Blue, the great drive into the Caucasus for oil, with Stalingrad as the anchor on the Volga. The city of Stalin himself, our officers said with smiles. Take it, and the Bolsheviks will collapse. We crossed the Don in August, under a blazing sun. The advance felt unstoppable at first. Our panzers roared ahead, the Luftwaffe ruled the skies, and the steppes stretched endless and golden. I wrote letters home full of confidence. We'll be home by Christmas. The heat was brutal. Dust choked everything, but morale was high. We sang marching songs and dreamed of the Führer's promised victory. By late August, we reached the outskirts. On August 23rd, the Luftwaffe unleashed hell. Wave after wave of Heinkels and Junkers dropped thousands of tons of bombs on Stalingrad. The city became a sea of fire. Black smoke rose so high it blocked the sun. We watched from the step, cheering as the horizon burned. Nothing can survive that, we told each other. Then we moved in. What we expected to be a quick capture turned into something else entirely. The city was already rubble. Factories, apartment blocks, grain elevators, reduced to twisted steel and broken concrete. Every street, every building became a fortress. The Soviets fought like demons. Not one step back, their commissars ordered, and they meant it. They defended every ruin with machine guns, snipers, and Molotov cocktails. I remember the first time we entered the city proper. We advanced house by house, clearing rooms with grenades and bayonets. The smell was unbearable. Smoke, cordite, rotting bodies, rats swarmed everywhere. We fought for a single apartment block for 3 days, only to lose it the next night when Soviet reinforcements crossed the Volga under cover of darkness. They came in small storm groups, 5 or 6 men with some machine guns and grenades, slipping through sewers and rubble to hit us from behind or the flanks. The days blurred. We attacked during the day, only to be pushed back at night. Our artillery and Stukas pounded the ruins, but the Soviets used the debris as perfect cover. One factory, the Red October, changed hands a dozen times. We'd take a floor, then hear grenades exploding below us as they tunneled up through the basement. Men died in hallways, on staircases, and cellars. The street fighting was so close that sometimes we could hear the enemy breathing on the other side of a wall. By October, the cold began to bite. Rain turned the rubble to mud, then the first snow fell. Supplies grew thin. We still believed the city would fall any day. Our officers promised it. Just one more push, they said. But every push cost more lives than we could afford. I lost my best friend, Franz, to a sniper while he was lighting a cigarette in a ruined doorway. One moment he was joking about the bakery back home, the next, he was gone. November brought the worst. The Soviet counteroffensive, Operation Uranus, slammed into our flanks, north and south of the city. Romanian and Italian allies crumbled. Suddenly, we were surrounded. The pocket closed. Hitler ordered us to hold at all costs. No retreat. Stalingrad must be held. We cheered the news at first. Relief was coming, we told ourselves. But the airlift failed. The Luftwaffe couldn't deliver enough food, fuel, or ammunition. We ate horse meat, then rats, then whatever we could find. Frostbite took toes and fingers. Dysentery and typhus spread faster than bullets. Christmas was a nightmare. We sang carols in the ruins while shells fell. Men wrote last letters home, knowing many would never be delivered. By January, the pocket had been split in two. The northern pocket held longer, but we were starving, freezing, and outnumbered. Every day, more men surrendered or simply lay down in the snow to die. I am still here in the southern pocket as January ends. The cold is killing us faster than the Russians now. Our guns are silent from lack of shells. The wounded scream for help we cannot give. Rumors say Paulus will surrender soon. Some officers talk of a breakout, but we all know it's too late. The city we came to conquer has become our grave. I think of my mother's bread, the smell of the bakery, the green fields of Bavaria. I wonder if I will ever see them again. This is the story as I lived it so far. Private Karl Heinrich of the German 6th Army. The Volga is so close, we can almost touch it, yet it might as well be 1,000 kilometers away. What happens in these final days, only God knows. My name is Alexei Petrovich Ivanov, a 19-year-old private in the 62nd Army, 13th Guards Rifle Division. I came from a collective farm outside Voronezh. Before the war, I drove a tractor and dreamed of becoming a mechanic. In the summer of 1942, when the Germans broke through toward the Volga, they called up every able-bodied man. I was given a rifle, 3 days of training, and sent east on a crowded train with thousands of others. The commissars told us, Stalingrad must not fall, not one step back. We all knew what that meant. By late August, we were digging in along the west bank of the Volga. The city stretched before us. Factories, apartment blocks, the great grain elevator, rising like a fortress. On August 23rd, the German planes came, hundreds of them. The sky turned black with smoke as bombs rained down for hours. Whole districts disappeared in fire. Civilians ran screaming through the streets. We watched from our positions, helpless as the city burned. That night, the river glowed red from the flames. The Germans attacked in September. They thought it would be easy. A few days, maybe a week. They were wrong. We fought for every street, every house, every floor. The city became a meat grinder. Our orders were simple. Hold. Reinforcements crossed the Volga at night in small boats under shell fire. Many never made it. Those who did joined us in the ruins. I was sent to the Red October factory district. The fighting there was unlike anything I had imagined. We defended the same ruined buildings for days. The Germans would clear a floor with grenades and flamethrowers, only for us to counterattack through basements or holes in the walls. Sometimes we fought so close we could smell the enemy's sweat. One night, we held a single apartment block against 3 German assaults. By morning, only 8 of us were left alive. We reloaded our rifles with the ammunition taken from the dead. The cold came early. Rain turned the rubble into slippery mud. Then snow began to fall. We had almost no winter clothing. Many men froze in their foxholes. Food was scarce. A handful of hardtack and watery soup if we were lucky. Water came from melted snow or shell holes. The rats grew fat on the corpses. Snipers on both sides picked off anyone who showed himself for more than a second. One of my closest friends, a boy from Saratov named Misha, was shot through the head while trying to bring a wounded comrade back to our lines. November brought the turning point. On the 19th, we heard the thunder of Soviet artillery far to the north and south. Operation Uranus had begun. Our comrades in the steppe had smashed through the Romanian lines and were racing to close the pocket around the Germans. We cheered when the news reached us, but the fighting in the city did not stop. The Germans still attacked with desperate fury, trying to break through to the Volga before the trap closed. By late November, the encirclement was complete. The Germans were trapped. We could see their planes trying to drop supplies, but most were shot down or missed the shrinking pocket. Their soldiers grew thinner and weaker every day. We found frozen bodies with empty stomachs and frostbitten hands, yet they kept fighting. Some units still attacked, even when they had almost no ammunition left. Christmas came and went in the ruins. We had no trees, no presents, only the knowledge that the enemy was starving while we received fresh supplies across the ice of the Volga. In January, the final offensive began. Our artillery pounded the German positions without mercy. We advanced block by block, clearing the last pockets of resistance. The Germans surrendered in groups now, ragged, hollow-eyed men who could barely stand. I'm still fighting in these final days of January 1943. The southern pocket is collapsing. We can hear the German radio begging for permission to surrender. Paulus is said to be trapped in the basement of the department store. Every hour, more white flags appear in the ruins. The fighting is ending, but the cost has been terrible. So many of my comrades lie buried under the rubble or frozen in the snow. The Volga flows dark and cold beside us, carrying away the blood of both sides. This is the story as I lived it. Private Alexei Petrovich Ivanov of the 62nd Army. We held the city when the world thought it would fall. The Germans came to conquer Stalingrad. Instead, Stalingrad swallowed them whole. The battle is almost over now. What remains is the silence after the storm and the long road to victory that still lies ahead. My name is Major Heinrich von Kleist, Operations Officer for the 71st Infantry Division, 6th Army. I was 38 years old when we crossed the Don in August 1942, a career soldier who had served in Poland and France. I believed in the mission then. Stalingrad was to be the anvil on which the Soviet Union would be broken. We would seize the Volga, cut the Caucasus oil route, and end the war in the East by Christmas. That was what the High Command promised, and I repeated it to my staff with confidence. The advance across the steppe was magnificent at first. Our panzers raced ahead, the Luftwaffe owned the sky, and the vast golden fields rolled beneath our boots. I rode in a staff car with maps spread across my knees, marking objectives with neat red lines. The men sang as they marched. I wrote to my wife in Berlin, "The Russians are finished. We will be home before the snows." On August 23rd, the city burned under our bombers. From the heights west of the Volga, I watched the horizon turn orange and black. It was beautiful in its way. One more week, I told my adjutant, and the flag will fly over the city. Then we entered the ruins. What followed was not war, as I had known it. It was something slower, more intimate, more terrible. We fought for single buildings, single floors, single rooms. The Red October factory, the barricade, the grain elevator, each became a world of its own. I stood in command posts, dug into cellars, listening to the radio traffic as companies disappeared block by block. Reinforcements crossed the Volga at night, under fire. The Soviets fed men into the city like bullets into a magazine. Our artillery and Stukas pounded the rubble, but the enemy used every crater, every twisted girder, every sewer as cover. They came at us in small storm groups, submachine guns, grenades, knives. Sometimes we could hear them whispering on the other side of a wall. By October, the cold arrived early. Rain first, then sleet, then snow. Supplies thinned. The Luftwaffe promised an airlift, but the weather and Soviet fighters made it a trickle. I rationed ammunition myself, marking every box on the ledger. Men began to freeze in their holes. Trench foot turned feet black. I visited the forward positions when I could, trying to keep morale alive with promises of relief. But I saw the truth in their eyes. They were no longer the confident soldiers who had crossed the dawn. They were ghosts in field gray. November brought catastrophe. Operation Uranus smashed through our northern and southern flanks. The Romanians and Italians collapsed. On November 23rd, the pocket closed. We were surrounded. Hitler's order was clear. Stalingrad will be held to the last man. Paulus radioed that we could break out if given freedom of action. The reply was immediate. Stand fast. No retreat. I was in the command bunker when the message arrived. I watched Paulus's face go gray. We all knew then that we had been sacrificed. The airlift failed. Day after day, the planes came, fewer and fewer, dropping their loads into the snow where we could not reach them. We ate the last of the horses, then the dogs, then the rats. By December, the ration was 1 slice of bread and a cup of thin soup per man, per day, if the supply dump still had anything left. Men began to die standing up in their foxholes. I ordered the dead stripped of their greatcoats and boots. The living needed them more. In the final weeks, the whispers started. At first, I refused to believe them. Then my own orderly, a loyal Bavarian named Muller, came to me in private. "Herr Major," he said, voice shaking, "some of the men in the 1944th Regiment, they are eating the dead." I struck him across the face. I called him a liar. But that night, I walked the lines myself. In a ruined basement, I saw 2 soldiers crouched over a frozen corpse, knives in their hands. They looked up at me with hollow eyes, too far gone to feel shame. I turned away without a word. I did not report it. What was the point? We were all dying anyway. I sat in my bunker with the last of the cognac and tried to write a letter to my wife that I knew would never reach her. I told her I loved her. I did not tell her what we had become. January 1943 was the end. The pocket was split in two. The northern half held a few days longer, but the southern pocket, where I was, collapsed street by street. Paulus moved his headquarters into the basement of the Univermag department store. I was with him on the 30th, when he received the final promotion to field marshal. We all understood the message. No German field marshal had ever surrendered. The next day, the 31st, he gave the order. White flags went up. I watched our soldiers shuffle out of the cellars, ragged, frostbitten, half-starved, many weeping openly. Some still carried their rifles, as if they might need them again. I walked out with the last of my staff into the freezing morning. Soviet soldiers waited in the rubble, their greatcoats thick and warm. They looked at us without triumph, only exhaustion. One young Russian private searched me and took my pistol. He said something in broken German. War over. I nodded. War was over for me. This is the story as I lived it. Major Heinrich von Kleist of the German 6th Army. We came to conquer a city. Instead, the city conquered us. The Volga still flows past the ruins, and somewhere beneath the snow lie the bones of more than 200,000 German soldiers who believed, as I once did, that Stalingrad would be ours. I do not know if I will ever see Munich again. I only know that the war I fought here ended not with glory, but with the taste of ash and the memory of things no man should ever have to do to survive. The final days are almost here. What remains is the silence after the storm, and the long road that now leads only into captivity. My name is Captain Nikolai Sergeyevich Volkov, commander of a rifle company in the 13th Guards Rifle Division, 62nd Army. I was 31 years old when the Germans reached the Volga in August 1942. Before the war, I had been a school teacher in Smolensk, married with a young daughter. The Germans took Smolensk in 1941. I never learned what happened to my wife and child. That loss turned me into something harder. When they sent me to Stalingrad, I was ready to die if it meant stopping them. We arrived in the burning city at the end of August. The Luftwaffe had turned whole districts into ash. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of charred bodies. Our orders from Stalin were simple and absolute. Not one step back. The Volga was at our backs. There was nowhere to retreat. Every night, small boats brought fresh men and ammunition across the river under German shell fire. Many boats never reached the western bank. Those of us who did stepped straight into hell. I took command of what was left of a company, barely 60 men at first. We were ordered to hold a sector near the Red October factory and the barricade. The fighting was not like any battle I had known before. It was not lines on a map. It was room by room, floor by floor, sewer by sewer. The Germans attacked with flamethrowers and grenades. We answered with submachine guns, knives, and bare hands. Sometimes we fought so close that we could smell the enemy's breath. One night, we held the same ruined apartment block for 12 hours. When dawn came, only 11 of my men were still alive. We reloaded our weapons with ammunition taken from the German dead. The city itself became our greatest weapon. Every pile of rubble, every collapsed wall, every basement was a defensive position. The Germans controlled the sky during the day, but at night, the ruins belonged to us. We learned to move like ghosts, crawling through holes in walls, using sewers, attacking from behind or below. Rattenkrieg, the Germans called it, War of the Rats. They were right. We became rats, dirty, hungry, vicious, and impossible to root out completely. By October, the cold arrived. First rain, then sleet, then snow. We had almost no winter clothing. Many men froze in their positions. Food was a luxury, a handful of hardtack or watery kasha if the supply boats made it across. Water came from melted snow or shell craters. The rats grew bold, feeding on the unburied dead. Snipers on both sides waited for the smallest mistake. I lost my best sergeant to a single bullet while he was trying to bring a wounded man back to our lines. November brought the turning point. On the 19th, we heard the thunder of Soviet artillery far to the north and south. Operation Uranus had begun. Our comrades in the steppe had smashed through the Romanian lines and were racing to close the pocket around Paulus's army. When the news reached us in the cellars, men wept openly. For the first time since the Germans reached the Volga, we allowed ourselves to believe we might win. The encirclement was complete by November 23rd. The Germans were trapped. Their airlift failed. We watched their planes try to drop supplies, only to be shot down or miss the shrinking pocket. Inside the city, we pressed the attack without mercy. Every day, we took back another block, another factory floor, another cellar. The Germans grew weaker and more desperate. We found them eating horse meat, then rats, then worse. Some no longer had the strength to fight. Others fought with the fury of cornered animals. By late January 1943, the southern pocket was collapsing. I led what remained of my company, 23 men, through the ruins toward the center of the city. On January 31st, we reached the Univermic department store. German soldiers were surrendering in groups, ragged, frostbitten, half-starved. White flags appeared in the windows. We moved carefully, expecting a final trap, but the fighting was ending. I stood in the snow outside the department store when Field Marshal Paulus's surrender was announced. My men gathered around me, silent. Some cried. Others simply stared at the German prisoners shuffling past with empty eyes. The Volga flowed dark and cold beside the ruins. The city we had been ordered to hold at all costs had held, but the price was beyond anything I could have imagined. This is the story as I lived it. Captain Nikolai Sergeyevich Volkov of the 62nd Army. We did not retreat. We held the line on the Volga when the world thought Stalingrad would fall. The Germans came to conquer a city. Instead, the city swallowed their army whole. The battle is almost over, now. What remains is the silence after the storm and the long road to victory that still lies ahead for the motherland. The Battle of Stalingrad ended on February 2nd, 1943. When the last German soldiers laid down their arms, the city was unrecognizable. 90% of its buildings lay in ruins. The Volga banks were littered with the frozen corpses of soldiers from both sides. Over 2 million people, soldiers and civilians, had died or been wounded in the fighting. The once proud industrial city on the Volga had become the graveyard of the German Sixth Army and the place where the tide of the Second World War turned forever. For the survivors, the war did not end with the surrender. The Soviet Union pushed westward with unstoppable momentum, eventually reaching Berlin in 1945. But Stalingrad itself was left as a moonscape of rubble and twisted steel. In the months after the battle, teams of soldiers, prisoners of war, and civilian volunteers began the immense task of clearing the dead. Mass graves were dug. Unexploded ordnance was carefully removed. The first priority was simply to make the ground safe to walk on again. Rebuilding began almost immediately, even while the war still raged elsewhere. Stalin declared that the hero city must rise again stronger than before. By 1945, temporary wooden barracks housed the first returning residents. Factories were rebuilt on the same foundations where men had fought and died. The giant Red October steel plant resumed production in 1947. New apartment blocks rose from the rubble, many constructed with the bricks and concrete salvaged from the wartime ruins. Over the following decades, Stalingrad was transformed. In 1961, the city was renamed Volgograd to remove the direct link to Stalin. A massive memorial complex was built on Mamayev Kurgan, the hill that had seen some of the bloodiest fighting. At its summit stands the towering statue, The Motherland Calls, one of the largest statues in the world, her sword raised high over the city as a permanent symbol of defiance and sacrifice. Today, Volgograd is a modern city of nearly 1 million people. The scars of 1942-43 are still visible if you know where to look. Bullet holes in old factory walls, preserved ruins left as memorials, and the quiet cemeteries where hundreds of thousands lie buried. Every year, on February 2nd, the city commemorates the victory with parades, veteran stories, and the eternal flame that burns on Mamayev Kurgan. The Battle of Stalingrad changed the course of history. It broke the back of the German army in the east and gave the Soviet Union the confidence to push all the way to Berlin. But for the people who lived through it, on both sides, it left wounds that never fully healed. The city that refused to die now stands as a monument to human endurance, sacrifice, and the terrible cost of total war. Thank you for watching these stories from one of the darkest chapters of the 20th century. If you want more first-person accounts from history's greatest battles, let me know in the comments which one we should cover next. Like and subscribe if you want to travel back in time with me again. Until then, remember, wars are won on maps, but they are fought and remembered by the men who stood in the ruins.